We are continually talking about this cycle of loving your neighbors, getting into the lives of your neighbors, showing them who God is, getting them to fall in love with God, moving each other to serving others. That is our lot in life. Ephesians says that we were put here for good works. We're not saved by good works, but we were put here for good works. And we ought to be helping our neighbors and serving people in need. Our theme this year is God first. Our theme verse is Deuteronomy 6, verse 7. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. This quarter, we're talking about God and work. How do we connect with God in the workplace? How do we connect others to God in the workplace? How do we provide an example so that people see God in us and through us as we work and as we work? I have a question, and this is 3 words, 3 powerful words. Are you happy? You know those little charts that you find in the doctor's office, like the pain chart? And it's like, are you, like this face, which is miserable, and then there's like kind of a sliding scale, then at the end it's, kind of this thing at the end. I think we could probably apply that to life and just say generally, are you happy? Now bear with me for a moment, because I'm not asking if you're content, although those are kind of cousins, and I think they go hand in hand. I think contentment certainly can lead to happiness. But are we genuinely happy? As American people, in one of the richest nations in the world, we ought to have a pretty high level of happiness. However, there are some interesting studies that show that we are not generally a happy people, a happy nation. This is an article from time.com. The title of the article is, Here's How Happy Americans Are Right Now. This was a study done back, the most recent was 2017. There are a bunch of other studies, and they're pretty similar findings. By many accounts, Americans are living in contentious times, yet they report being happier in 2017 than they were in 2016, according to the 2017 Harris Poll survey of American happiness, shared exclusively with Time. That's not to say that Americans are especially happy overall. Only 33% of Americans surveyed said they were happy. 33%. That's a failing grade for those of you who don't remember the days of school. 33% is not very good. In 2016, just 31% of Americans reported the same. And then there were some surveys post-COVID that show roughly similar numbers. In all fairness, there are studies that show that there are up to 60% of Americans who are happy. So I think it depends on what areas you survey, what demographics certainly play a role, how big the survey is. This was only among 2,200 people. Pretty small sampling of people to say that that's a picture of all of Americans. But I've looked at a bunch of studies, and pretty similar numbers. This is interesting too. The people who reported being the happiest were men and women in high-income households and those with a high school diploma or less. Republicans and Democrats experienced similar increases in happiness levels. Overall, men reported a great increase in happiness levels compared to women, although they were more likely to say they were frustrated at work. Jumping down, I should have highlighted the paragraphs that were interesting, but there was one that jumped off, and it showed that people say that spirituality is making them happy. It was something like 71% of people said they were happy because of their spiritual lives. I found that to be fascinating and encouraging. Because generally, if you take snapshots of the population, people are generally pretty unhappy. However, they say that faith plays a major role in their level of happiness, and that they're content with their spirituality. They're content with life in relation to their spirituality. And I think that's really important. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 8 through 20 says, it's talking about the vanity of wealth. And of course, Solomon, we know he was very wise, he was very wealthy, and he made a lot of mistakes in his life. He did a lot of really dumb things. He blew money, he made money, he blew money, he lived a pretty lavish lifestyle. And so this piece of wisdom literature is talking about how it's just vain to follow wealth, to be lovers of money without purpose. It's not necessarily saying that it's bad to be wealthy. I talk about that a lot. There's nothing in the world wrong with being wealthy. You could be a billionaire and be a very godly person and use your money for good. Nothing wrong with being wealthy, but there is when you chase money and think that's going to make you happy. And so my question is, if 33% of Americans are happy, I mean, over 70% of Americans are not happy. Hard-working Americans are not happy. How does that reflect their attitudes in the workplace? And if we're a mirror, a reflection of who Jesus Christ is, if we're reflecting back who Christ is to people, if we're trying to draw people to God, if we're trying to draw people to Christ, if we're trying to show people who God is and how God's working in our lives, if we're unhappy 71% of the time, or 71% of people are unhappy, that matters. And so I wonder how many people are chasing a paycheck and they're miserable at their jobs. They complain about everything. And they're showing people that being a Christian isn't really all that it's cracked up to be. I wonder. I don't know the answer to that, but I wonder. And so this matters. This is what this passage says. If you see in a province the oppression of the poor and the violation of justice and righteousness, do not be amazed at the matter. For the high official is watched by a higher, and there are yet higher ones over them. In other words, there's going to be corruption all over the place. People are going to grab for power. There's going to be power and dominion and oppression. So don't be surprised by that. But this is gain for a land in every way, a king committed to cultivated fields. In other words, a king who isn't kingly, who just rules by power and by position, but somebody who goes out among the workers and who's a humble servant. Verse 10, he who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This is also vanity. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? In other words, the more you produce, the more you work, the more you produce, and you're chasing after money. Say you're producing food for people or whatever, food or goods, the number of people receiving that increases as well. And so you're chasing after wealth, and eventually your work consumes you. Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much. We talked about rest last week, the importance of rest. DP told me, he said, make sure you mention that I took your sermon to heart last week, so he's resting up this week. He's at the beach with his feet propped up, watching the sermon. Rest is good. Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. In other words, if you're chasing after money, if you have a full stomach, if you have everything that you need in the world, and you don't rest, and you're just constantly moving, your stomach is never really full. You're chasing after vanity. There's a grievous evil that I've seen under the sun. Riches were kept by their owner to his hurt, and those whose riches were lost in a bad venture. Remember when Jesus said, It doesn't matter if you store up all these treasures here on this earth. Rust and moths, they're going to destroy that. Instead, store up these treasures in heaven. And he is a father of a son, but he has nothing in his hand. As he came from his mother's womb, he shall go again, naked as he came, and shall take nothing for his toil that he may carry away in his hand. In other words, you're going to die, and you can't bring things with you. You're storing up all these things, all these treasures. You're chasing after money. You're chasing after wealth. You're complaining about everything in the process. You're unhappy. You're chronically overworked, unhappy, and you're gaining all these things, and then you die. And you can't take them with you. Verse 16, this also is a grievous evil. Just as he came, so shall he go. And what gain is there to him who toils for the wind? Moreover, all his days he eats in darkness, in much vexation and sickness and anger. Do you know anybody like that? Do you know people who just work and work and work and work and work and work and work, and they're alone? They eat in darkness. Their friends go away. There's much vexation. They're constantly anxious, agitated, angry, sick. You're physically unwell because you're overworking and you're unhappy. It's interesting, isn't it? Behold, what I have seen to be good and fitting is to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun, the few days of his life that God has given him, for this is his lot. The idea, the message is, are we enjoying the things that we work for? Are we chasing after things and trying to fill up this treasure chest full of stuff? Or are we working hard, giving God the honor and the glory, and taking time to enjoy the fruits of our labor? And I think this isn't just in the workplace itself, but I think it's in the kingdom work as well. Do we actually sit back and enjoy the fruit of our labor among the kingdom people? I feel like a lot of churches right now, a lot of church people, by churches I mean the church people, I think a lot of churches right now, post-COVID especially, are tired. They're burned out, they're worn out, they're overworked, under-volunteered. A lot of churches are worn out, and so the question is this: are they happy? Do we step back and do we look around and say, you know what, we've worked hard for years. Are we taking time to enjoy what God's put in front of us? Are we taking time to enjoy each other, to enjoy relationships, to enjoy worship, to enjoy and sit and relax and bask in the fruit of our toil? I fear that a lot of people aren't, at least in this country. I think they're thinking, oh my goodness, I got to work harder, I got to do more things, or people are just checking out altogether. They're saying, you know what, I've done my time, I've put my work into the church, and I'm kind of checking out. In either scenario, I don't think people are very happy. And again, I think happiness certainly can stem from being content, from being joyful, stepping back and enjoying the fruit of our labor. Everyone also, again, verse 19, everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them and to accept his lot and to rejoice in his toil, this is the gift of God. For he will not much remember the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart. That's an interesting question too. Are we occupied with joy so much so that all the other stuff that happens in life, the good and the bad, kind of melts away because you get lost in that moment of joy and happiness? Because according to these verses, that's a gift from God. to be able to sit back and enjoy the fruit of our labor, the fruit of our toil, to sit back and enjoy relationships, enjoy family. It's not saying to check out from work. The Bible is very clear about working hard, putting in your time, working for the kingdom. We're going over Revelation in the adult class. There are scriptures about being lukewarm, about kind of checking out as Christians. The 7 letters to the 7 churches. There are warnings about being idle. God wants us to work, but He doesn't want us to overwork and be unhappy and chase after money and things and success and whatever it is. God wants us to be occupied with joy in our heart. And I'm just going to leave that as your message for all of us, that we need to remember that, and we need to show people who God is through our joy and through our happiness and through our contentment. We need to be thankful for what God provides for us. In a little bit, we're going to take up a special contribution. For the 3rd time in a year, the well in Limonade, Haiti, which people are absolutely dependent on, the well has broken. In addition to the 2 wells that we're raising funds for, the 2 new wells, we have another well that's broken down. We're going to take up a special collection, and we're going to fund that well to be fixed. They already had somebody come and assess it. They're going to put brand new parts on. All the old parts have been pulled. They're definitely worn out. They're bad. And people are going to have running water again. And we're going to share videos and pictures of people rejoicing when that well is working again. We work hard for the money that we send to different people, for the money that we contribute. Week after week, we contribute money. We work hard for that money, but the question is, do we sit back and enjoy the fruit of that labor? Do we stop and say, my goodness, look what God's doing with this. Look how God is blessing people through my work. I think if we're not, we should. Because God's doing amazing things through the hard work that we do. And when we show people that, it becomes contagious. People see how God's working in our lives and how God is blessing other people. So that's your message this week. Go out, be joyful, be blessed, and remember always to thank God for what we have. If there's anybody this morning who's not yet taken that step to put Christ on a baptism and is ready to do so, we are ready to receive you. Or if you have prayer needs, you can come up as we all stand and sing this song together.